Alright, I'm going to start back up. I'm on part 5 of 11, creating a connection string and working with SQL Server Local DB. Good news is you've already seen a lot of this stuff. Alright, now I want to go back first, and I know I've said some of this before, but I want to say it one more time. Hopefully you can look over here and see this well enough, and if you can't, you can look on your own screen. But I want to make sure you understand the things that are in here. All right, this app data, after we get done with this lesson, what you're going to see in there is you're going to see a database. It's going to be called Movies DB. All right, so you'll see that in just a bit. This app start has got 5 different files in it. For now, the only one that we care about is this route config, which tells the system where to look for stuff, how to look for stuff. All right. This content, which we haven't really looked at, it has all the CSS that is given to you by default. All right, and that's all Bootstrap stuff except for this bottom file that says site.css, and that's your own file. You can go in and do nothing with it or change it any way you want. So the content holds the CSS. Then you've got your controller. You already know what that is. Again, the controller is the go-between for the model and the view. The only controller we've worked with in here has been this Hello World controller. That's the one that we created. We made changes to it, etc. All right, then you've got fonts. So if you want to be able to add some glyphicons, all right, if you don't know what those are, you'll learn next semester. Okay, it's no big thing. Then you've got your models, and we just added in here our movie.cs file. All right. And in there we put in what's going to become our database table. And we added what's called a context for that. So the system knows that it's going to have to create this into a database table. All right. We also have our scripts, which hold all of our JavaScript files, including our jQuery files. Finally, we've got our views. Every time we create a new controller, for instance, we came in and we created a Hello World controller. When we did that, it automatically created under views, it created a folder called Hello World. Since we made it an empty controller, we had to manually go in and add in here our index.cs HTML and our welcome. All right. Again, you're going to see this is going to get bigger and bigger, as you'd probably guess, as we go on. The only other thing I want to mention to you, if you look please on the screen, there are 2 files here named web.config. There's one here and there's one over there. Whenever you're told to do anything with the web.config file, don't ever touch the one that's under your views folder. Just don't touch that. It's basically a system file. So when we have to go in and make changes, we're always going to change this one on the bottom, just so you're aware of that. All right? So then jumping back into here, it says there's 2 things we want to do. Create a connection string, which will allow us to work with SQL Server Local DB. You know what that is because we looked at that last week. All right. And use SQL Server Express Local DB. We've kind of looked at that as well. Now, again, I don't want to read. The author says right here, we're going to be using Local DB, which means that we're going to be using the server that's built into our own machine. If we weren't using that, we'd probably, instead of using local DB, we'd be using the name of a database server someplace. All right? They talk about what local DB is. Again, I'm not going to sit and read to you. It says if you want information, you can look up SQL Server connection strings. You can see that it's hyperlinked. So again, We want this web.config that you see down here. All right, so I'm going to open that one. Okay, so I'm going to open this web.config right here. Double click on it to open it up. All right. And what I want you to see, if you would all look up on the screen, please, even if you're not really paying that much attention, I'd really like you to look at this. And that is, this is actually one line of code. And it's letting the system know this is the connection string to that database. We already have a database. So no, we don't. Yes, we do. The database is what holds the stuff, so when you register, when you click that register button and you're able to log in, that's in this database, one that you see in blue right here. That's what that one is. That is the default database that you get. Notice it's called, really ugly name, ASPNET-MVC movie dash, and this is a timestamp. You can see that it's got on there 0429, meaning it was created yesterday when we started working on the project. And it's got 08-2053. So it was about 8:20 a.m. when that was created. All right. So what we're going to want to do in here is we're going to want to add another connection string. So I'm going to grab this, but before I do, I'd like to talk about what's in here. All right. So it says add name movie DB context. Hopefully you can all see that up near the top. What is that? That is this movie DB context. We're starting to open the path of communication between our model and the web.config file, which is eventually going to create both a database for us and a table in that database. All right. The connection string. You've already seen this. You did this last week. You had data source equals local DB slash MSSQL local DB. You had that already, which it just means we're using the server that's part of our local machine. All right. Then initial catalog equals all this stuff. Ours is a little bit different. All right. The security has been set up for us, etc. All right. So I'm going to grab all of this. Is it going to complain? I don't know. It might. If I try doing something and it doesn't like what I'm doing, but I'm going to grab that, copy it to the clipboard, go back into my web.config file, and right after the connection string I have, I'm going to add this second one. All right. So now I have a second connection string that I put in there. All right. And they show you what it is. They explain in more depth and breadth of coverage than I'm doing what's in here. All right. One of the things that I have to do, and I have to talk to Mr. Smith about this, is for fall, I think I've already told you this, but for fall, there's 27 chapters in that book. It's almost 900 pages. I don't know, maybe you're good enough that you could go over a 900-page book and get all of it. I don't think I'm good enough to present all that to you. I know what I'd like to cover from the book, but it's up to me that I've got to have an agreement with Mr. Smith because we have to cover the same thing. Who said that? The Higher Learning Commission said that. All right, that we have to be teaching the same stuff. All right, so they come in here and they explain what that movie DB context is. It's what I just said to you. Now, as it says, now we're going to come in and build another controller, a movie controller. Why? Because right now we've got a movie model, but it has no way of communicating with anything. So we're going to create a movie controller so that the movie model can communicate with it. And when we do that, we're going to automatically build a bunch of views for ourselves. So even if you're not really paying attention, I'd appreciate it if you look at this, because we're going to build this in a different way. So I'd like you to see the way in which we're going to build it. All right? So it says next we'll build the new movie controllers. That's part 6. All right? Now, there's some goofy stuff with the way that this works. When you start working with models, please listen to what I'm saying. When you start working with models, if you start to add stuff and then you run the program, it's not going to work. Why? Because the way this is set up, if you look on the screen here, before we go in and we add our new controller, we've got to click Build and Build Solution. What that's going to do is it's going to sync up all of our files with all of the system files. So they're on board with one another, for lack of better words. All right? So we've done that. That didn't take much. It was just build solution. Think you can do like a Control-Shift-B also. All right? There might even be another way of doing it. I don't really care. So now we want to go and right mouse click on our controllers again. Click Add Controller. All right? We've done this before. So I'm going to come over here. Notice in our controllers, what do we have right now? We have an account controller, a Hello World controller, a home controller, and a manage controller. Why am I telling you that? Because we've got those 4 controllers, and notice we've got an account controller, an account view folder, a Hello World controller, and a Hello World view folder, a home controller, and a home view folder, a manage controller, and a manage folder. This shared is what all of them have in common. So we're going to come up here and create a new controller. All right, we're going to create a new controller. When we created that Hello World controller, we made it empty, which meant it made a folder here with nothing in it. We had to go and add that stuff to it. Now when we create a movie controller, we're going to tell it to fill that thing up because it's going to be working with databases. So we're going to tell it to add methods for us to add things to our database, to update things in our database, and to remove things from our database. We can do all that by taking advantage of what Visual Studio has here, which is called their scaffolding feature that's going to add some code to it for us. So I'm going to right mouse click here on controllers, and I'm going to choose Add and Controller. I don't remember if they told us to call it Movie or Movies, so let me check. Looks like it will be Movie. All right. So we've done this one. All right. I think we've even done this one. This is the one we want. MVC controller with views using Entity Framework. When you choose that one, it means that's going to be involved with your database, which is what this is. All right. So with that third one there, I'm going to click Add. All right, now it comes up and it's asking me this stuff. Well, I want to make sure that this looks like, at least as much as possible, like this does. They're not exactly the same anymore. But I want it to be the movie and the MVC movie models, the application context, etc. All right, I think mine is actually a little different. So here, I click the down arrow. It's in alphabetic order. So I've got movie, MVC movie model. Here I click the down arrow. Notice it's got application DB context. All right. I think those are the ones that they told me to choose. I'll double check. Movie model, application. They want all 3 of these things checked. All right. Generate views. That means make those files in that view menu. Create those files. The insert, the update, and the delete. And it'll do that in just a minute. It'll even make an edit so we can do a select statement. We also want this, and what this, checking this, that says reference script libraries. That means if there's any JavaScript or jQuery we need to use, we've got the file, the library's already available to us. This thing says use a layout page. That means it'll build a layout page for us. Notice it's called Movies Controller. That's what they want. All right? So again, what I want you to take out of this, when you look here, right now there is not a folder called Movies because there is not a file here. There is one that's called Movies, but there isn't a Movies controller. Now there will be. When this gets done, there'll be a Movies controller here. So there's now our Movies controller, and it made a Movies folder in Views. Notice what it has in it. Create, delete, and there's an edit, and there's a details, and there's an index. So it built a lot of these files for us already because of the options that we just chose. So here's, as they say, this is where the rubber meets the road, because now I can see if what I've done so far is correct or not. So I'm going to do a file save all, and I'm going to run the program again. In fact, I'm going to run it, and I'm going to go to my movies, and from there I'm going to run the index.cs HTML file. And you can see it says loading, which means it's still going through the process here. Okay. It says this context has changed. Consider using code first. That isn't good. Not sure why that didn't work, but I'm going to go back, see if I can fix it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and do another build solution. Sometimes that cleans it up, sometimes it doesn't. Well, I'm going to go on. There's an error in here. I don't know what it is. And I'll go and look after class. This is what should have come up. All right? And it doesn't look like much, but when it comes up, if I click the hyperlink up there, under the word index, it says create new. If I click that, then what comes up is this. These will all be blank, but I can fill in a title, I can fill in a date, I can fill in a genre, I can fill in a price. And if I click create, it's going to put it in. In other words, I now have a database table. All right. So I can fill this, I can put in as many movies as I wish to. All right. And I should be able to go in there and play. Again, I'm going to back up for a second here. I can click edit. And if I click edit, it's going to get me back to here. To that screen right there. So if I spelled Sally wrong, let's say, I could change it. It's also got some built-in functionality. If I put in an illegal date, if I put hello in there, it's going to give me an error message. If I go to the price field and I put hello in there, it's going to give me an error message. We'll talk about how you can validate everything that's in there in a little bit. But we can go in then and we can choose edit, and I just showed you that. Details, which kind of takes a snapshot of everything that's in here, and it'll show it to you. Or delete, which will come up and say, hey, do you want to remove this? All right. Now, it says, open this up. This is what I want you to see from here. I'm not going to go that much further. I don't want to until I fix this error. I think I know what it might be, but I don't want to just start debugging in front of you and have stuff not work. All right. Now, it says here, it says a portion of the movie controller with the index method is shown below. This is the key line right here. This line of code that says return view db.movies.toList. Even if we had 100 movies in there, that toList would show as many on the screen as it could at a time. And then it would allow us to go to another screen and see more and more and more. But the idea, though, is the power in there is in that toList command. Because it will list out everything, every movie that is actually in there. All right, just a couple more things. The first thing in here, and again, I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to say, does this make sense to you? All right. Notice right here it says, if ID equal null, it's supposed to return this. Let's suppose I have 3 movies in my table. I don't care what they are, but I have 3 movies. And I go in and I ask the system, could you please show me movie number 4? Would you all agree it's not in there? Everybody agree with that? There's 3 movies. I'm asking for number 4. So it's going to come back, and that code is going to run. It's going to come back, and it's going to give me one of those error screens like you saw that I had before. And that error screen is going to say, bad request. All right. If I come in and it says, okay, it's not a bad request, but let's say there's literally nothing in that movie. It's going to come back and tell me not found. What I'm trying to get across to you is we didn't write this code. All right, ASP.NET's scaffolding feature wrote it for us because of what we chose when we built that model. All right. So in other words, even though this isn't working right now, and I'll have to fix that, all right, still when I come in here, I can go in and look at it created the create code for me. Notice again, there's even some validation. It created the delete code for me. It created the details for me. It created the edit for me, which would be my update. And it created the index, which is the one that will run from the beginning, unless I tell it to run something else. All right. So because we use that scaffolding feature, it already provided that stuff for us. And they go through here and they explain what's in the details. They explain the toList that I just mentioned to you. They have you make some changes and pretty it up. and they show you that once you've done all that, what they'll tell you is, hey, under app data, you should now have a database. Half the time, you're like, no, I don't. There's nothing there. So you click this button that's up here. That button says, all right, basically it should do a syncing process. S-Y-N-C-H-I-N-G. When you click that, and then you click the refresh button that's right here, then the database should show. All right. Look at this, if you would, please. Look on the screen. Does it look familiar? You've all seen this kind of stuff. It'll create a movies database with an ID, a title, a release date, a genre, and a price. If you show the data, if you put in what they said to put in, it'll put in the ID for you automatically, 1, the title, When Harry Met Sally, the release date, 1/11/1997. Since we didn't put in a time, it automatically defaults to midnight. Comedy, which we put in as a genre, and price, which we put in as $6.99. But the key thing is we are filling up the database not from in here, but from our own form. All right, that's what you'd want to do. That's what you'd want to create for a potential end user. They don't know this stuff. If you open up the table definition, they don't know what any of that means. They don't care what any of that means. All right? You've seen this window where this is what we did last week when we filled that stuff in at the bottom. Notice it's kind of hard to read, but it says identity. Identity 1, 1, which means start at 1 and increment it by 1 every time. We started one of ours at 1,000. We started the other one at 500. But you've done this already. All right? So until I can get this fixed, I'm stopping right now. It's a lot earlier than I planned on stopping, but I'm stopping right now. I want to fix this. And once I get it fixed, or hopefully if I can get it fixed, all right, then tomorrow I'll go back and quickly show you what I couldn't show you today. And I'm going to pick it up from right here. And if you look, it's page 59 out of 120. So if I can get this to work, literally, once we get into class tomorrow, we'll be more than half done. All right, because I'll go through this next chapter too. All right, so that's all that I have. I think what the problem is when I created the controller, I think I chose the wrong option. But I'm going to remove that controller. I'm going to remove this movies controller right here, and I'm going to remove this movies file and try to do it again. I'm going to go back and look at their steps and make sure I did it correctly. All right?